was a staff assistant in my sophomore year at St. Michael's. What this meant was basically, I watched the doors coming into one of the dorms to make sure that the only people coming in were the residents. I sat at a desk from 11 p.m. to 4 a.m. a couple of nights a week. One night, I was making the rounds from floor to floor to make sure all was relatively quiet. I got to the top floor of the building, and that is, of course, when the proverbial strange things started to happen. I began walking down the hall, and I heard the wind howling through the recycling room on the floor. It had been a quiet night weather-wise, so this was a little odd. I passed it off as some random New England weather patterns and continued to walk on. When I stepped in front of the first resident's door, it started to rattle like someone was going to come out. I stopped and waited, but the door just kept rattling, so I moved on. Then, the next door on the other side of the hall started to rattle as I passed in front of it, and then another door started to rattle also. Now there were 3 doors all rattling away, and it only started when I walked in front of them. I hadn't done this earlier in the evening, and I was wide awake, so it wasn't my imagination. What really startled me was all of a sudden, in the midst of all this door action, I had a feeling that someone was right behind me. I turned around me, and from the distance, I could have sworn I saw the fading image of a priest in all black slowly fade, but the doors kept on shaking, and the wind was screaming. So I ran the rest of the way down the hall and back downstairs to my desk. A check of the outside revealed that the weather was perfectly calm. I believe this is the oldest dorm on campus, so who knows what otherworldly beings reside there. The other thing that happened to me while I was there was sort of a strange religious experience, and I'm probably one of the last people something like this would happen to. I was driving home from my then boyfriend's, now husband's house, and heading back to my dorm at St. Mike's. I was at a stoplight, alone in the car, when I heard this deep, low, and gravelly male voice tell me that the second coming was going to happen soon. The voice filled me with dread and danger. It sounded like a lot like a voice that had been altered to sound lower, like when documentaries try to disguise voices of the people they interview. The light turned green, and I drove off. I then looked into the mirror without thinking, and I could have sworn I saw the same priest from the hall sitting in the back seat of the car. I stopped the car immediately, looked back, and nobody was there. I felt like I was going crazy because I knew I saw someone in the back seat of my car. About 2 minutes later, I started to think about what just happened and got very scared. I talked to one of the priests at school the next day, and he felt this was a normal experience within the realm of St. Michael's. Partially because it was getting near Christmas time, and partially because he felt the campus was a center for both good and evil, the good being the chapel on campus, and the bad being the portal that was never shot in the boys' dormitory. He confirmed the story about the pentagram and my location discretion without me bringing it up. I've heard this godly voice once or twice since the original incident, but not to the degree that I heard that night. I once heard of an experience my boyfriend had in that same chapel. He told me that on one occasion he was alone. He walked into the chapel, and under the huge statue, he saw 2 figures in cloaks praying silently under the statue. He's a complete skeptic when it comes to hauntings, and he insisted that there was nobody there at the time. When I was 7 years old, my parents, my sister, and I lived in a home that was 1-story house that sat way back from the street. My aunt used to babysit us when my parents were away at work. Anytime I got into trouble, My aunt would make me go into a little bedroom in the back of our house, and she would make me stay in there for hours at a time. I never knew why, but I was definitely afraid of that room, and the whole time I was in there, I would hide under the blankets too afraid to move until she came to let me out. One day, while I was playing in the yard, I found out why I was so afraid of that room. While I was outside playing with my toys, I suddenly got the feeling that I was being watched. I looked around me, but I didn't see anybody. I went back to playing, but I just couldn't shake that watched feeling. I turned to look at the house to see if maybe my aunt or sister was around, and I saw a woman in the bathroom window watching me. I know it wasn't my aunt or sister because they both have very dark hair, and the woman in the window had very light colored hair. I don't know what to do. I was afraid to move. I stayed outside for the rest of the afternoon because I didn't want to go into the house. When my mom came home that day, I finally went inside. I didn't say anything to my mom or anyone about what I had seen. I was worried that they wouldn't believe me, so I kept quiet. My sister and I shared a bedroom, and that night, I woke up to the sounds of cupboards opening and closing, like someone was looking for something, and I heard glasses being moved around and the water being turned off and on. Well, being a little kid, I figured I was just imagining it, and as I lay there listening to this, I looked over at my sister, who was sleeping through this whole thing. The next morning, I asked my mom if she was up last night getting a drink, and she said no, but she looked at me kind of funny. That night, my mom had some friends over, and she sent my sister and I to bed early. My sister fell right to sleep, but I just kept thinking about what I saw in the window and what I had heard the night before. My mom and her friends started talking about a lady who had hung herself in the back bedroom of our house. I could not believe what I was hearing. My mom then went on to tell her friends that she hears noises in the kitchen at night. The next day, as I was playing in the yard, I saw the woman in the bathroom window again. I started to cry, and my aunt got mad at me, so she tried to lock me in the back room again. I was kicking and screaming that I did not want to go back in there, but she wouldn't listen to me. As I sat on the bed, under the covers, I heard the door swing open. I thought it was my aunt to come let me out, so I uncovered my head, but nobody was there. I then started to hear a squeaking noise, kinda like something heavy hanging from a window bar. It sounded like it was coming from the closet. The closet was a really big walk-in one. There was no way I was going to look in there. I just sat on the bed, listening to this noise, until my aunt came to get me. I later found out that the lady hung herself in the closet of that back room. I'm just wondering if anyone knows why she did this, and when it took place. Well, that's my story, and believe me, it is all completely true. I'm an identical twin, and often because of this, most people ask us if we share experiences. You know, they say, like on television. My answer is always the same. Sometimes. It's true that twins, on occasion, may share certain emotions, even though they may be miles apart. This is what my brother and I have known for years. But everything changed when my brother and his wife and 2 children moved into my late grandfather's home in Norristown, Pennsylvania. The history of the house is nothing spectacular. The only event of any importance occurred when my grandfather, who had been diagnosed with colon cancer in 1987, decided to spend his final days at home before the cancer took him. He died in a hospital bed which had been set up in the living room of his house later that year. And from that point forward, various members have lived in the house without any strange occurrences or bump in the night, until my brother Peter and his family moved in. The first week in their new home, my brother was excited as ever about living in such a large home compared to the meager apartment he and his family had been sharing for the past 2 years. Given the history of the house, i.e., my grandfather dying there, didn't bother him one bit, since he was the last person who believed in such tales. Then, about 2 months after moving in, he decided to clean out the basement to make room for his music equipment. He is a part-time musician, and a new washer and dryer my father had bought them as a Christmas present. While digging through the accumulated junk of a half a century, he happened upon a small Bible. Inside the front cover was an inscription denoting the Bible as a gift to my grandfather from my great-grandmother in 1906. He took it upstairs and laid it out on one of the coffee tables so that other family members visiting could see it when they visited. Remember that I had yet to hear of this find, since it only had occurred that day, but that night I had one of the most terrifying nightmares I could ever remember. I dreamt I was standing on the landing, overlooking the living room of my brother's house in Norristown, Pennsylvania, but something was wrong. Having visited the house many times in the past, I vividly remember the layout of how it used to look when I was a child, but in my dream, I remember seeing an end table, which was never there before, on which a book was placed. I was drawn to it for some reason. I slowly descended the stairs, even now, recalling how hollow my footsteps sounded on the hardwood floor as I made my way towards the table. As I got there, I looked down and saw that it was, surprise, a small Bible. Upon opening it, I saw there was an inscription made out to my brother from our father. This is where things got really spooky. I remember hearing my brother's voice behind me say, "This is mine, which Dad gave me. Please give it back." I was too terrified to look around, because even though it sounded like my brother, there was something otherworldly about the whole thing. I finally succumbed to curiosity and turned around. This was, of course, when I woke up screaming something. I don't remember what. I startled my wife, who was then yelling at me to keep it down. The neighbors will think we're fighting or something. Later that morning, I spoke to Peter to tell him the strange dream I had, and that's when he told me about what he had found and who it really belonged to. I was startled beyond words. I told him I would be down in an hour. I live in Parksea, Pennsylvania, approximately an hour north of Norristown, to see the book. Too late, he said. Why? I asked. It's gone, he replied. The conversation went on from there about how he had placed it on the end table, an end table that he just picked up at a yard sale that day, but when he woke up, it was gone. I asked if his wife had taken it, but he said that it was impossible. They had flown back to Texas 2 days earlier to visit her folks and took the kids with her for the short vacation. After going around and around about what could have happened to it, as well as the strange dream I had and what the voice had said to me, in the end, we just didn't know what to say. I guess it was one of those things that will never really be explained. 2 weeks later, his wife and 2 children arrived back home and were in the process of unpacking when she went down to the basement to see how the cleanup had gone. That's when she asked him about the small Bible. What Bible? He asked his wife. Oh, The one in the basement near the keyboard you put there. Looking confused, I'm sure. My brother ran down to the basement, and sure enough, there it was on the door, right where he had originally found it. Picking it up, he read the inside cover again, only this time, there was no inscription at all. Did he imagine the writing to begin with? Did my weird dream that night have anything to do with it disappearing again? I don't know. Neither does Peter, but there's definitely activity in that basement. Because what I saw next, in the basement, a few days later, almost explains some things, although it was incredibly scary. I had another bizarre dream. I ended up going back to the basement to retrieve the Bible, only this time, there was a red humanoid-looking creature sitting on a chair reading a book. He had horns protruding from his head, and he looked like an ape crossed with Bigfoot. His face very human-looking at the same time. Frozen in shock, I approached him. He pointed to the book, and there was an image of a car on fire. I woke up in a cold sweat and screamed. A few days later, I got a call from a guy who sounded like my grandfather. I kid you not, it sounded identical to him. All this man said to me on the phone was, "Check on your father, something's wrong with him." I later found out that my dad had been in a car wreck. The car caught on fire. He managed to escape alive. The most shocking thing, my twin brother had the exact same dream on the same night, same exact creature. I guess they say twins are inseparable. When I was younger, I had a terrifying experience with a ghost. I was fast asleep, and then I suddenly woke up. Something told me to wake up, and I just did. I looked at the clock, and it said somewhere around 3:28 a.m. I turned my head slightly to the left, and I saw this girl. I would say that she was in her early teens. She looked very blurry, but she had a blue hue, and it clear at the same time. She was moving in slow motion. It seemed like she was underwater, or something. She had a long nightgown, and it was blowing very slowly. She was holding a short candlestick, and her hair was long reddish brown color. She looked at me, and then I looked back at her. I was surprisingly calm. I got up to tell my mom what I had seen. The next morning, I woke up and I asked my mom if she saw the lady, and she said, "What lady?" Could this have all been a dream? I'm not entirely sure. I've been deeply confused about this ever since. My house has always had extra company. It's been 13 years since we moved in here, and for a while, there were some really odd things happening. I was 10 years old when we moved in, and fell in love with the huge, empty attic upstairs. I would bring my toys and little sister up there to play with. She was around 8 at the time, so we had a lot of fun together. We brought our dollhouse up there, and would spend hours making up stories and having fun. I would go up there and read by myself a lot because it was quieter than the rest of the house. Nothing out of the ordinary ever happened while my sister and I played up there, and I felt very comfortable. In the far end of the room were little racks where clothing must have hung before. One day, I was up there alone playing when I discovered this old-fashioned looking gold purse with a painting of a deer and a medal on it, and being a lover of old things, I was psyched. I brought it to my mother, and she said it looked like a pocketbook from the 1920s that her grandmother used to have, sort of a flapper type style. We hung the pocketbook in the back of the closet to keep it out of harm's way. About a year later, my father and a friend of his transformed my attic playroom into a bedroom for both me and my sister. My father had left a quarter of the room where the pocketbook had been found alone, and put up a wall and a door separating the rest of the bedroom from that area. My sister did not like her bed being up against the wall of the back room. Then, what I felt next was unexpected and unbelievable. I was laying there with my eyes open, frozen with fear. I felt as if someone was watching me, but I was afraid to move. I'd never felt like this before. I was never afraid of the dark as a child. My sister said, "Can I please come over and sleep with you?" Now, I usually said no to this and stopped being a baby, but I wanted her to come over, pretending to be reluctant. I said, "All right, but don't hug me," even though I really wanted to be. She ran over and squeezed me, and I squeezed back, and she said, "I'm scared," and I said, "Me too." And then boom, boom, boom. 4 loud knocks right on the wall, which our heads were practically up against. I could actually feel the vibrations from the wall. Then my sister, crying, said, "What was that?" I made it up. I said, "Me." I said, "Don't worry." I was trying to tell myself that it was me when it happened again. Boom, boom, boom. We both jumped up and ran downstairs at this point, into my parents' bedroom, and my father went up to see if there was anyone hiding up there. No one was. However, my sister refused to go back up there and slept with my parents. I, however, went back up there scared, but mad that my favorite place was trying to kick me out. I felt almost betrayed and hurt, so I stayed up there for the whole night, refusing to leave, but hoping it would not try to scare me. It didn't. My sister would make attempts to sleep up there later, but would always run downstairs at some point. I couldn't blame her, since most of the time I really wanted to join her, but never would. Over the next several years, I often heard whispering and the doorknob being wiggled as if someone was trying to get in. At first, then it became a game. The doorknob would wiggle really fast, and I would say, "I'm trying to sleep," and it would stop, and then I got used to the weird noises. It's 13 years later, and in that time, I've had many friends tell me that they heard whispering or tapping on the wall, or someone breathing in their ear. To which I say, "I told you there was a ghost in my house." But it sparked my interest in the paranormal, in which I am an avid believer because of my ghost buddy. I don't know if the purse actually belonged to the ghost, but the house was built in 1940, after the flapper times. But my mother did tell me that the old man who used to occupy the house had 2 wives who both passed on. Whether or not either of them died in this house, I don't know. The purse may have belonged to one of them. Hello, Phantoms. If you would like to support this channel, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. We've got a lot of purses here to celebrate the occasion, so put them in your purse of bags and just comment, like, share, and subscribe. I meant to say put your subscriptions and your comments and your likes in the bag and share them with the world. Anyway, guys, I don't even know what I'm saying. Anyway, it really does matter a lot that you guys share, so if you think you're insignificant and you don't think that you're your shares don't matter. They do matter. We all make up this community of great people, and I just wanted to thank you guys so much for supporting me, for leaving a comment. If you leave any nice things to me, if you leave any comment at all, whether good or bad, like I really appreciate it. And it's just so nice to be able to see your comments in the comment section below, like after I upload a video. That's one of my favorite things about YouTube, is seeing the community grow and seeing you guys actually be so excited to see the content. This is one of my favorite videos I've ever made, honestly. Tell me in the comment section below which was your favorite ghost story. I really like the ghostly paranormal twin premonition kind of thing. I mean, obviously it wasn't ghosts, twins, but they were twins and they had those paranormal experiences. So let me know in the comment section below. Write anything you want. It doesn't matter if you're shy. If you are shy, just, if you never comment, just say hi. Always helps, and I'll definitely respond to you. Like, I always respond to comments, and I just love you guys. So thank you so much. I can't wait for 2020 to just keep going, because it's been so exciting. I've had pretty much amazing videos so far that I've been able to upload to you guys, and being able to share something I'm really passionate about with, the story accounts is just amazing. So anyway, guys, I'm going to stop blabbing on and just let you go. So love you guys, and I'll see you in the next video.